CDI stands for Committee for Democracy and Information Technology. We are in 10 countries today. We were founded in 1995 by a social entrepreneur by the name of Rodrigo Baggio in Rio. The idea behind CDI was to use new technologies, information and communication technologies, to empower local disenfranchised communities in Rio, so in the urban slums that make up a lot of the city's landscape. So today we're a 12-year-old charity, and we're a network of 753 schools. The schools, we call them technology and civic engagement schools. They are informal community learning centers based inside these communities and entirely run and managed by the communities themselves. CDI comes in with donated computers, donated software, the educational curriculum, and ongoing training, capacity building, and support for these schools. The decisions about who's admitted, what the criteria is, all of that is locally made by the community. We're more of a facilitator or support role, so we do ongoing capacity building and monitoring and evaluation, and we visit all the schools every 2-3 weeks to make sure everything's okay and to give them whatever support they need. Our main goal is that the school transcend the four walls of the classroom and actually become a community reference. And I'd like to say a little bit about our educational curriculum too, because there's a big fad right now about cheap hardware and cheap computers and cheap laptops. And we think that's great. We support it. We think, it does have to be more accessible to disenfranchised populations. But we think the debate cannot stop there, because that's the easy part. And that makes it sound like if you buy 100 computers and dump them on these slums, that you will end poverty. And that's not the case. It's not focused on just providing access to machines or access to computers. What we're really worried about is access for what? So computers for what? Technology for what? What can be the purpose of this? And how can we bring this technology to these disenfranchised communities in a way that helps them improve their living conditions, helps them solve the problems that their communities are facing, helps them address some of these issues, and how can they actually be empowered by this technology and appropriate the technology and not just consume violent video games that are not going to help change the situation at all. So we're very much interested in stimulating these communities to know each other, know what's happening, know what the issues are, and know what tools they can use to solve them. And in this day and age, the most valuable common currency that we have is knowledge and information. And there's no better way to access knowledge and information than through the new technologies that we're living on in the society. So we have a critique of some of the organizations that are working in this field, because in Brazil you have all these government-funded and corporate-funded digital inclusion programs. And what they do is they set up high-tech centers in the middle of these slums. And they say, we have, 15 slums are now digitally included. But there's no educational curriculum, there's no concern as to included for what, and what are these communities actually using technology for. That's the question we seek to answer with our curriculum. It's based on the work of a Brazilian educator by the name of Paulo Freire. He was an advocate of informal education and of critical thinking, and he thought that education had to be used as a tool to make people question their own capacities to evoke change. Each and every single lesson plan has a civic aim and a technical aim. So if the technical aim is learn how to use spreadsheets, the civic aim would be go out door to door into your community and ask what the main issues, what the main problems are for these community residents. Come back and put that into a spreadsheet. So it's constantly integrating the digital literacy aspect with the civic aspect. And during each class, usually they're 3 to 4 month classes, students come together, they make a list of the issues facing the communities, and they collectively choose one issue to tackle. So that could be anything, whatever is relevant in that specific community. It could be a rat epidemic. which is causing disease and other problems. It could be lack of health centers. It could be poor education. It could be drug use, teenage pregnancy, whatever they decide is relevant.
Right.
And then, based on that decision, they start structuring a very grassroots level advocacy campaign with the goal of solving that issue. So they do that through petitions. They do that to researching on the internet who their local authorities are. They do that through awareness campaigns. They do PowerPoint presentations with the PowerPoint skills that they've learned. They put up flyers. So they do this whole mobilization and awareness campaign in their communities. And the goal is that in the course of that 4-month period, they will have implemented, planned, executed an advocacy campaign to change and solve that problem. So we like to call these micro-revolutions across the network. So it's enabling these people to tap into their own abilities and their own potential and become active, informed citizens who are able to become agents of their own destinies and who can lead change. So we don't want to graduate students who are digitally literate. We want to graduate change makers.
Yes.
We want to take these disenfranchised youth and adults and transform them into leaders of social change, with just a little bit of help. We have a community in the Northeast, a very simple problem. The local government changed the bus stop from where it was originally. So this was going to make people who worked in the city have to pay 4 extra fares, 2 to go, 2 to come back, every day to get to work. And this is impractical with a minimum wage.
Yes.
So they started a whole mobilization with petitions, with contacting local government to change that, and they were able to get it reversed. So you have to remember that these communities are usually deprived of all of the other basic public services. They are hopeless. It's a chronic hopelessness. It's a taught hopelessness. It's a hopelessness that's very hard to break. They don't think that anything they can do can bring about change. There's no hope for social mobility. So when they discover that, yes, there's something they can do to solve those local problems, this doesn't only solve the problems. This creates a ripple effect of positive self-esteem, of positive role models in the community. And it creates a new virtuous cycle of community coming together, working together, and solving their own issues. So it's a very low-cost model, and the reason it's a low-cost model is that we have no expenses with rent. These are spaces that already exist inside the communities. We have no expenses with purchase of equipment, because the equipment comes from donation drives.
Right.
Our greatest expense, 70, maybe 80% of our cost, is capacity building. And that's a kind of middle activity, so you're not... That's hard to get funding for. What we see is that there's starting to be a shift from a grant-making mind frame to more of a social investment mind frame. And that it's also an interesting conundrum, because they demand very high levels of professionalization and accountability and reporting, but they hate funding operational costs.
Yes.
There's a lot of focus on indicators. There's a lot of focus on statistics. There's a lot of focus on external impact evaluations. We've been lucky to have a few good external impact evaluations. So studies that have actually proven the link between CDI's work and an increase in the capacity of our students to generate income, or CDI's work and an increase in self-esteem, or CDI's work and better academic performance. So this has given us hard evidence to say, here's the link between technology and fighting poverty, technology and sustainable development. But we've definitely seen, all grant-making foundations adopt more corporate standards in evaluating social programs, and we welcome that as long as we're, we receive funding correspondent to the expectations.